Well, um, to put things in the current world economic context, there's several chained events that are not in the public news that I just kind of have to go down. In 2005, Saudi Arabia just about doubled the amount of oil rigs that it had in its kingdom, in its oil field regions. So it put down just as many new wells in 2005 in January, starting in January, as it already had in existence.
Never had.
Yeah. It's actually more. It's more like 1.5, like 144%.
That's nuts.
It's a lot.
For any any venture that's resource or business or
that's
production
a lot of
related
money, and that's a lot of
right.
like physical infrastructure that's now in the ground. We're gonna double it. What if we doubled the number of highways in the United States? Woo, They did that, but it only increased their oil production by about 7%.
Do you suppose, I mean, obvious, like you said, that's a lot, it's expensive and a lot of infrastructure. So obviously people had to talk about it a while, and then everybody had to build things and dig things. And what do you think they expected? Do you think
hopefully more?
Do you think that people actually, somebody actually knew, oh boy, we could double our oil rigs, but we're gonna get, talk about diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Doubling your infrastructure for a 7% increase in yield seems like a losing venture to me.
Yeah, you're never gonna pay the money back, not from the oil at least. Right. I don't know if you can use an oil rig for something else. So they did that. Yeah, because Saudi Aramco, their national oil company, is the real deal. They're not a bunch of wild-eyed idealists.
Right.
So they did that. It only increased their production by about 7%. And then not too much later, there was a global financial crisis.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that one. And some geologists and economists have linked these two events because...
Geologists?
Yeah, what do they know?
Geologists doing linking oil rigs and the housing crisis or the housing bubble.
Right. Kind of funny, isn't it? So why would these things be linked? Well, maybe it's because traditional oil fields, the year that we discovered the most oil, not produced, but discovered, where you look in the ground and you do, you send down sound waves and make a little earthquake and read what's coming out, 3D seismic imaging, things like that. The year that oil discoveries on the planet Earth peaked, the absolute peak year was 1962. So,
and I imagine if you look at the graph of amount of oil discovered by year, it's a pretty coherent shape.
Yes, it is. Because
it's not like looking at the graph, it's not like you would be surprised and have a big one tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's no likelihood of that.
No, there's no.
Like you look at the graph and there's a peak and then it goes down and down, and then the line goes down.
Yes.
Pretty clearly.
Professional geologists by the thousands and tens of thousands know where to look for oil, and they know how to look for it, and they know how to verify their discoveries.
Right.
You're going to have to just accept that.
Right.
Believe me, they're out there.
I believe it.
And so...
That was 62, huh?
1962. It was a little while ago.
That's not production. That's
not
discovery.
Production, discovery. So you can sit there and say, wow, we just found a 1 billion barrel oil field. You found it.
Right.
The oil's still there in the ground. It's going to take you 15 years
Right.
to build all the infrastructure, the pipes, the pumping, the drilling, all that to get the oil out of the ground and do something with it. But you found a
Right.
billion barrels.
But if you found 1 billion in 62 and then you found, then in 72 you found 20, 25 million, and then
Yeah.
in 82 you found 10 million, and then in 92 you found 5 million.
Yeah.
You sort of have to know what to expect at that point.
Yeah, at a certain point, you don't. I don't care. It doesn't matter how quickly you produce it, if the reserve is the same constant. Like if I have
Right.
if I have a tank of gasoline that has 100 gallons, I can pull out 50 gallons and it'll last 2 days. If I do it that per day, or if I pull out 1 gallon a day, it'll last me 100 days. It's math.
Right, and there's sort of like this question mark because it's a discovery deal, right?
Mhm.
But you can use math to know what to expect, and so we basically should know exactly how much oil there is left. There's
Yes.
not a big question mark.
Yeah, it's
Because
a
we
small one. You
Yeah.
hem it in. It's
Right.
within a certain degree of uncertainty.
Right.
You don't actually technically know until a few years after the fact.
Right.
Because the numbers haven't come in yet. Like you're pulling a physical liquid out of the earth. It is not a psychological. It's not. You're not measuring the faith. You're not measuring whether people actually believe in local elections or something.
You're not measuring thetans, not something
Yeah.
concrete like that.
Yeah. You're not polling public opinion. This is a physical barrel of oil coming out of the ground. And so
They
even
come
if,
out in barrels. That's cool.
right,
Sorry, hardy.
right,
Hardy,
no,
har,
I
har.
mean, it's a unit of measurement, the volume. Take your pick. And so yeah, it peaked in 1962, and so people who know this stuff solidly can sit there and do the math and say, well, within a 3-degree uncertainty range, we can tell you, how much oil you can expect to be coming out of the ground with current levels of technology.
Right.
So, regular oil fields, coincidentally, maybe, also peaked around 2005.
Sort of funny that seas on the moon are dry and oil fields on Earth are wet. Sorry, that's
Yeah.
another bad one. But repeat what you just said.
Right, gallows puns. Gallows humor puns, yeah. So, conventional oil fields, these are things like that, what they found in 1962, peaked in 2005 as well.
Oh, okay.
Production.
Oh, production.
Conventional oil production peaked. So
Gotcha.
discoveries peaked in 1962.
Right.
Discoveries. Production of those discoveries peaked in 2005.
The same year that
Saudi Arabia doubled its oil
Right.
count. Maybe not a coincidence. They doubled that oil rig count, and it's not like they said, "Oh, we're gonna use our shitty technology, and we have something sitting in the garage that we're gonna roll out in 2016, 10 years later."
Right.
And then we'll make even more oil. They used the best technology that we have available, and with all of that effort and all of that money poured into it, they managed to increase it a whopping 7%.
Right. So
cannot
in,
get-
in 2004, they got 100 barrels of oil.
Yep.
In 2005, they doubled their infrastructure and got 107 barrels of
That's
oil.
correct. That's correct. There are many people who honestly believe that if it's expensive enough, people will find a way to get it out of the ground. It's not true. That is not true.
You can't get blood from a turnip.
Yeah. And what's really funny about it is because since we realize our entire existence depends entirely on oil, they create this belief in their mind, but they don't apply it to any other resource. You could tell them, like, look, there's forests on the island of Hawaii, If timber was incredibly expensive, would you be able to create pull an infinite amount of timber off of Hawaii? No, they
course
realize there's a finite area, there's a finite number of trees at any given moment, depending on a lightning strike or some falling over. But you tell them, like, look, they can't get any more oil out of the ground with current levels of technology. And they'll say, oh, well, but if it gets expensive enough, they will.
We'll figure it out.
And that's insane.
Like it being valued more will make more of it.
Yeah, of a finite resource. It's very much the same logic that you find in conspiracy theory minded people, really truly. I've encountered it personally, like guys telling, like, oh man, there's oil all over the place, like they're sinking wells in North Dakota or whatever, and it's like, are you a geologist? Do you think that there are geologists in the world? Are you a mathematician? Do you think that there are people who are good at math somewhere? Who are you going to listen to? But they'll sit there and tell you with a deadpan face, flat line on the lie detector, like, no, there's oil all over the place in North Dakota and eastern Montana. And I'm like, technically, you're right. There's a little bit of it.
Right.
It's trivial amounts.
Right.
So conventional oil peaked in 2005, some depending on how exactly you're going to measure. Maybe it was in February or maybe it was in July.
Yeah, what quarter was it?
Right, exactly. It was actually Q1. I'm pretty sure. And it's been on a bumpy decline ever since, of 5 to 7% over the aggregate of the entire world.
And I've known you've been mostly careful to say conventional.
Yes, you have to draw that distinction.
I think I know where we might be going.
Yeah, so
it's 5 to 7%
a year.
A year.
Every single year. Set 5 to 7% of a shrinking number. We're losing about 3 to about 4 million barrels per day of production from our conventional fields. And there's nothing we can do to stop that from happening.
We should be able, with I think it'd be calculus, right? A little bit of calculus. We should know when we've got zero, when to expect zero. Although you couldn't tell the believer that. They say if it's expensive enough, we'll find it.
Right.
But I mean, clearly, wouldn't that already be happening?
Well, we're here to talk about current economic events, So, but yeah, I mean, what?
It's such a funny, backwards. No, the rarer it gets, the less rare it will get. Like, it can't be both at once, right?
Yeah.
The scarcer it gets, the more readily available it will become.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing you're saying they're saying.
Yeah, and that's not, you could sit there and in the year 2012, look at reputable magazines talking about Saudi America and that we were getting in a price war with Saudi Arabia, which was technically sort of happening, but it didn't reflect the geologic realities on the ground. So, peak oil happened in 2005, and it put incredible stresses on the entire the economy of the planet Earth, the human economy.
What was the mechanism by which it put? People's
it got
faith.
more and more expensive.
Oh,
if you look at the price,
okay.
Because it was starting because demand was starting to match supply almost exactly in the years right after 2005. And I think the maximum price right before the financial crisis was like $144 a barrel, $144 a barrel, something like that.
Okay.
What that does is it puts stresses on everything because it's like your ligaments tightening up as you get older. Everything gets more expensive.
Right.
It gets more expensive to make the good, but it also gets more expensive to ship the good.
Mm-hmm.
But then also it starts affecting demand for the good because the price per gallon at the pump was pushing $4 and a little bit above in the United States during those years. And so now I don't have as much expendable income to buy the good that was more expensive to make and ship from China, And so everything went, oh shit, Like energy is the economy. Energy per capita is the single most important human material well-being. Like the most important metric of human material well-being is energy availability per person. If you are energy poor, you are poor. If you are energy rich, you are rich. That's it. Like that's the next step Marxism needs to take. Swear to God, you want to develop poor people and stand up for the working class, you need to go after energy. You must really alleviate energy poverty. It puts stresses on the entire world's economy, which includes the financial system. And the trigger mechanism for the financial crisis of 2007, 2008 was a mortgage bubble. But that was just the trigger. The fundamental thing happening, what was the triggering?
Right. So the mortgage bubble is this financial phenomenon that's the catalyst for
yes,
or the match or the spark or the whatever.
Yeah. The fuel for the financial crisis was peak oil.
This energy reality.
Yeah. That was the peak. The financial crisis was the moment of inflection for the age of fossil fuels. And now it's over. Now we're on the downhill slope of that. And we have been since 2008. It's been a good 12 years of it. It never ended. It wasn't a single financial shenanigan. It wasn't that one guy they put in prison for doing some futures trading, right? It wasn't that. Before the financial crisis, the most
It's so funny, the theater that we've put together, that it's just all incident, superficial, like
you got to have somebody. Oh my God, Yeah, it is theater because it's a faith-based thing, right? Because financial systems do have a very strong.
But it could have been anything. I mean, of course you
Could have been
you can
anything.
moralize about these awful predatory, institutionalized behaviors of these lenders or whatever. That's fine, but like it's sort of incidental that it
Yes.
happened to be the housing bubble.
Yes.
It could have just as well been something else.
Yeah, it could have been Russia, declaring bankruptcy, or Brazil.
Because the fundamental thing is
yes, that's what matters.
the oil thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So before the great financial crisis, the single asset class that by itself was the most valuable thing in the world was U.S. home ownership. That asset of mortgages and housing was worth, apparently on paper, something like $23 trillion something dollars.
Whoa.
Americans park their value in their home. The reason their homes have value is because of fossil fuels. If fossil fuels go away, the suburbs go away, and all the value, you're sitting in my house, it goes away overnight. You can't get the groceries in the fridge, and you can't repair your roof, and then the electricity cuts out, and you break a window, and then all the, drywall disappears, and all the plywood melts away in the rain, and it's gone. It's not worth anything anymore. It's a stranded asset. It's not even that. It's less than an empty field that you can at least graze some cattle on. If the oil goes away, American houses, our whole way of life, disappears. It's not worth a fucking thing. It's gone. So if oil peaks, it's not an instantaneous disappearance, like I just described. But if you're living through it, it's a slow squeezing of that. You're now squeezing that out, and it's just downhill from here because conventional oil peaked in 2005. So our way of life, all our asset values are stranded, and they're going to get more stranded in the future. So it's kind of fitting that it was the American.
Right. It's sort of
mortgage.
appropriate.
It is appropriate.
At least poetic or something.
It is. There is a kind of justice in economics, even, strangely enough. I really mean it. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You want to buy your free lunch, it'll poison you later. It might taste great going down at first, but it will block up your bowels and you'll die. A horrible death.
this might be unimportant, but and I might get the words wrong because you were saying that U.S. home ownership was the second most valuable something or other
asset class.
Single
asset class thing, as opposed to, say, stocks in
Right.
steel companies or railroads. You know, what I mean?
Okay.
So,
So
that the housing market was worth more.
oil
than
is
all
an
the,
asset. U.S. homes are an asset.
yes,
Stocks, bonds,
gold,
businesses.
yeah, forestry products,
Anything
fisheries.
anything that could be okay.
Yeah. You know, fisheries are an asset.
How does
class.
this relate to, like, sometimes people talk about the value of a traded commodity?
Right.
That's different language. They sound related. Like,
that-
coffee is one of the
Yeah, second most traded commodity.
right,
No,
but
that's-
not the most second valuable asset class
No.
because it goes oil, U.S. homes.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, this is where
And maybe it's not important.
this is where the invisible hand of energy comes into this, because thanks to the human mind and faith-based systems, the value in terms of price on a piece of paper can often swing wildly out of bounds from physical constraints.
Mm-hmm.
This is why there's asset bubbles all the time. You know, it's like, well, what's the actual value of a tulip in the Netherlands?
Right.
Or an the French Mississippian.
Right,
You know?
because of these abstractions
Yeah.
that are these related or literally these faith-based systems.
Right. And so,
Well, yeah, the thing's worth what someone will pay for it.
yeah,
So, right,
Technically.
even saying that, you're sort of actually recognizing that it's not worth its
Yeah.
sort of material.
right. I can very easily say that bubbles are very real. Financial speculative bubbles are very real. They are real physical events.
As real as a wave.
As real as a wave, or as real as a religious service, or as real as a crusade, you know? They matter, but that doesn't mean that...
They're not matter, but
Yes, exactly. They're energy, they're social energy, they're us projecting our collective...
well, they're information.
Yeah.
Or they're an epiphenomenon. Or, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, they are. It's better to just...
Sorry,
it's better to assign all of them in there into just one big lump, and then so that you
They're
can
not
focus on...
Yeah, sorry. I'm just...
Yeah, I don't care what the price of oil is. The volume of oil in the earth is finite. You know, that's where you have to really draw that hard line and be like, oh, it doesn't matter what the price per barrel is in terms of reserves in the ground. You have to study the geology and you have to study the psychology. So yeah, technically, before the great financial crisis, the single largest value on paper in terms of dollars was the most valuable financial asset class on the planet, okay? Technically, on paper. But if you were to sit me down and say, well, what is actually the most valuable thing in terms of economic stuff, I'd have to say
love,
Chinese
solidarity.
No, I'd have to say
human
Chinese civilization.
compassion. Oh.
In terms of like what's going to matter the most economically in the future. Like, yeah, you can have plenty of bubbles all over the place. The Mongol Empire at its beginning was the most potent thing, but at its end, it was one of the least potent things that could only break apart. You know, like it was existing in its own shadow of its early success, right? Peak oil does not let America survive. It doesn't. And so it is kind of fitting that it was our houses and our mortgages that were the fuel sparked by, peak oil and a mortgage crisis, lending crisis.
It was like this smaller contradiction that
Yeah.
ignited this bigger contradiction.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
this other lie.
I mean, a good example is in terms of military supremacy. The moment people realized they might not be military supreme anymore, the breaking of Napoleon's army, at the Battle of Leipzig, or it was like there came. No, I'd say Waterloo. It was
That's the one I was gonna guess.
Right.
Because that's one of the only battles I can name.
right. There was this famous moment where the Imperial Guard was this massive, like 6,000 strong cavalry force that had never been defeated, I think, before then. And so they had they believed in their own invincibility, and then they were beaten, they were broken, and it was said, the cry went around, Napoleon's army of like, the Guard is broken, the Guard is defeated. Well, now what? Maybe we are mortal,
Right.
so.
Right. That can't be.
Yeah.
It's one of the few times where
Yeah.
you're one of the few times where you're actually forced to re-examine your like entire sort of cosmology and worldview. Like,
Yeah.
well, no, I knew that the Imperial Guard was infallible, and you're telling me they were broken.
Yeah.
So I've got some thinking to do.
Yeah, yeah. The feeling invincible if you actually feel it and believe it, is a hell of a force in and of itself. It's self-reinforcing until it finally shatters.
Well, so what's the shatter? Like you're telling me it's sort of already shattered, but
Yeah.
no one's,
Aren't they? We're living in interesting times,
yeah,
aren't we?
I guess, yeah.
I mean, we've bet. So in 2008, there was this massive financial blowout, and the economy, the top dropped out of the economy really strangely because of peak oil, which is the absolute rock bottom of the economy. And then through financial shenanigans and the government stepping in and the end of the free market, we bought ourselves 12 more years of
Wait, 8 plus 12.
2008 plus 12.
No, I was making
Oh.
a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's this year.
Yeah, I'd say March 16th. That's my arbitrary day because it personally matters to me. But the age of fossil fuels is now really over. And so what happened is so peak oil causes a blowout of the Western-led world order. Financial shenanigans and the final bleeding out of our financial system, which is the same. The shenanigans are the bleeding out of our financial system. You have a bailout. The federal government implicitly backs up the Wall Street, which is the tail wagging the dog. Wall Street is supposed to reflect the real economy, not the other way around. Now people are just worried about a Wall Street meltdown because that'll mean Main Street versus Wall Street. You see that shit. This isn't me.
Right.
This isn't my rhetoric. Main Street versus Wall Street. You'll hear people talk about the real economy. What the fuck are you talking about? Is it real or not? It's all the real economy because this is us grappling with our psychological projections. What happened was, with that federal government backing and the lack of accountability and one guy going to jail, and movies like The Big Short coming out, or Margin Call saying, oh no, this is what happened. They don't talk about peak oil in The Big Short.
No, I was going to say that. I mean, we didn't even
Yep.
know, not many of us talked about it at the time.
We didn't know about it at the time until somebody came along and said, no, this is the narrative. Conventional oil is still going down 5 to 7% a year. It's been doing it since 2005. So what happened? A big ball of debt, pension funds, toxic assets that were bottled up, wrapped up, and the same bullshit financial shenanigans went into the mortgage bubble, went into fracking. Because fracking is not economical at any price, but you can still pull a barrel of oil out of the ground.
So
You might make $30 off of it, and it costs you $60 to produce it, but you can still sell
you
it.
can still sell it.
And financial shenanigans can make up the difference.
Same flavors of financial shenanigans.
it's fraud. It's all fraud.
It's a pig in a poke, whether it be mortgage bundles or whatever.
Or a
these
barrel
toxic-
of fracked oil.
toxic assets, or you can invest in this company that's fracking, or I mean, the oil's worth what it's worth. I
Yeah,
mean, the
you can
barrel
still
of
sell the
oil is worth what it's worth,
Yeah.
but all the things surrounding the production of that oil, when it comes to fracking, that's the stuff that it's a losing venture, but still gets bought and sold.
Yep.
And so this market develops around fracking, even though
Yes.
at its core it's hollow.
Yes.
I mean, it's negative.
Yes.
You put more money into it than you get out, no matter what.
If you got in early.
Right. Right. You being the collective, not
Yes. Yeah.
as usual, somebody's making money. I know
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Like, if you produce a piece of Hollywood
Yeah.
for
yeah.
well, what are films going for these days? $100 million?
Right, yeah.
you-
Make some schlock. you know,
right,
like-
and it loses money at the box office. Well, there might be a few losers, but somebody's
Yeah.
making money.
Yeah, no. I mean, people really don't like to lose money, and they'll do anything to, especially that kind of person, the wheeler and dealer.
Well, go on.
So it was the Ponzi scheme of the fossil fuel age, because it promised, it's a Ponzi scheme because it promised infinite prosperity forever, progress. And you'll get to keep having your suburbs and your freeways and your SUVs and your cars and
Thank
your drive-through.
Goodness.
Yeah.
My favorite things.
Yeah.
Suburbs, freeways, and drive-thrus.
Barbecues and ball games.
Yeah.
That Ponzi scheme should have ended in 2008. And we should have said, oh, wait, wow, you're right.
This
This
thing
can't
had a
go on.
shelf life, and this is it.
Yeah,
And it's over.
yeah. Instead, it said, I think I can kick that can one more time.
Yeah.
I got this big old boot called Wall Street, and the can, I think the boot can kick the can. And they did. 12 years. Okay? So the 5 to 7% decline in conventional oil fields, what made up the difference? U.S. fracking.
Mm-hmm.
And we did, I will say this, hand over my heart, we produced a whole lot of oil. We really did. It cost us far more
Than the oil's
than
worth.
the oil is worth, but we produced a whole lot of oil.
When you say far more than the oil is worth, do you mean far more than the oil is worth on paper, far more than the oil is materially worth, or both?
Both.
Right.
Because one frack might cost you $10 million to do the fracking. And you
My
have to
experience
do
of
sometimes
frack
maybe
costs
three,
about $400.
two or three a day, in the Bakken or the Eagle Ford or the Permian. A whole industrial ecosystem was created from debt and toxic assets, the flotsam and jetsam of the financial crisis, a colossal employment scheme, a colossal jobs program was created by Wall Street investors looking desperately for anything to back up their debt. They found fracking. They employed hundreds of thousands of people. They created dozens upon dozens of companies, fracking companies,
Right.
the ones that supplied the sand, the ones that supplied the liquids to go down into the fracking, the refiners, all this other stuff. They did that. People made money. People were paid.
Yeah.
People got pensions. They had retirement funds that they socked away. And then on the weekend, when they weren't working, they went to their barbecues and their ball games. It supported supermarkets and all this other stuff. And at its base, it cost more money and energy to do that than what they were getting out. It was net negative.
Did anyone, again,
The people who got in early made a hell of a lot of money if they got out in time.
right.
Yeah. It's a Ponzi scheme. They never made, and things like Chesapeake Energy, the guy's name was McClendon, he killed himself. These others, They are publicly traded companies, and they have to report their balance sheets to the public, to the SEC, in order to be able to be traded on Wall Street. So they do this. They have been cash flow negative from the beginning. People don't care. Investors don't care. They didn't. That's ending now.
Right. That can
But
only-
so this isn't secret. This is not some like, oh, there was a secret meeting between these guys smoking cigars in the back room, drinking whiskey and saying, hey, Senator, I'll scratch your back, you know. No. They openly were like, yeah, we're not making any money. We never have. And investors were like, cool, here's another $1 billion.
Get some more.
Frack some more. So between 2010 and 2019, a lot of oil was pulled out of the continental United States. A lot because of fracking. Huge amounts, millions and millions of barrels. It made up the difference from that decline.
Did it,
70
did it really?
Yes, it did.
Like, I mean,
oh,
just-
in terms
just-
of volume,
just
geologically,
because I'm-
yes.
yeah.
Not financially. That's different.
No,
But geologically, real oil.
Production, yeah.
Yes.
If you added the fracking to the conventional oil field production, it was a flat line for the decade.
It increased. It
or-
caused a glut. Actually, it
Yeah, okay.
caused market imbalances because the United States has superb infrastructure. We've got ports, we've got refineries in Texas and Louisiana, we've got good highways, all this other shit. They couldn't move it fast enough. They couldn't build the pipelines to move it out of North Dakota, you know,
Right.
from the Bakken. They had to move it on trains. And refineries were like, we don't have any spare capacity for all this fucking shale oil you've been doing.
Right.
And to draw the distinction between the shale guys and the fracking guys, I mean, the conventional guys and the shale guys.
Right.
Conventional oil, an oil field drilled in Texas in 1970, you know. They were going nuts. They were breaking their teeth in rage and frustration, going, the price of oil in 2010 was $95 a barrel, and we could make real money off of it. You motherfuckers, because of your financial bullshit, profiting off of this breakdown of our financial system and this fraudulent Ponzi scheme, you drove the price down to $65 a barrel, and now we can't make any money. Fuck you.
Right.
Your fraud is killing our bottom line.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Right.
They're going insane. Guess who also is going insane? Russia, Saudi Arabia, conventional oil producers.
Right.
70% of new oil production between 2010 and today came from U.S. fracking. Fraudulent, a Ponzi scheme.
Right. The distinction being in a material way, the conventional oil production is a profitable extraction venture.
It is, yes.
Where you can spend $10 and the stuff you get is worth $14.
Yeah, you can make a margin because it's cheap to produce.
And, however we're valuing these things, but we'll pretend that there's some sort of universal truth to the fact that,
Right.
well, it's this many calories,
Yeah.
this many BTUs is
Yeah.
worth $10.
Yeah.
At whatever.
Yeah.
And shale oil, you spend $10 and make $7.
Oh, it's more like you spend 20. You make $10, but you spent 20.
Right.
So
Gotcha. So but they're in the same market, so I can imagine those folks being frustrated.
yeah, they're pissed. They've been pissed. They're
Meanwhile,
like,
it's subsidized by these financial shenanigans.
Yes, it was a subsidy by Wall Street, not even by the government.
Like
the
the
government
money
allowed it to
going
happen.
into it is
Technically real, yeah. Pension funds, stock market investors, hedge funds, things like that. They need a return. And so a lot of them, what they would do is they'd say, okay, we will give you, so hey, you have a fracking concession in East Texas in the Permian Basin or the Eagle Ford. Let's say it's the Permian. It's the only one still even growing. Oh, you have a fracking concession? Cool. Here, we'll give you $100 million, but you have to make us your priority investor. No matter what, we have to pay a little premium. that we will get our 5% return back no matter what. It's guaranteed by the FDIC or whatever.
Whoa.
Yeah. They're just a little, it's a legal distinction.
Weird.
They're going to make a little less because they're not taking huge risks. It's like The Big Short in that way, like.
But it's guaranteed.
But it's
Some of their
guaranteed.
other investors are going to end up
Yeah.
holding the, whatchamacallit.
Holding the bag.
Yeah.
If the company goes under, and it's not going to go under as long as those things kind of balance out, but now they are starting to go under. I think Chesapeake is talking about bankruptcy. And in those bankruptcy proceedings, the courts go through it and they say, oh, well, here's your guaranteed investors. They get paid out first. And the guy who took the long shot 100-to-1 bet and gave you $1 million, he gets nothing.
Right.
He lost his $1 million.
With 100 guys that did that.
Yeah.
Lose their $1 million.
Yeah.
A piece.
Yeah. The short sellers kind of are supposed to balance out the long sellers in the long run, right? Like I want my big payoff by taking this long shot bet, but I'll probably lose my money. But just in case, you never know. Whereas the standard investors, like, I'm not going to double my money. I'm going to make 7%. I put in $100, I got back 107, but it's guaranteed.
Right.
Hell, that's the whole point of having a government bond. It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed income. You have to wait 30 years, but it's a bond. The government would have to go bankrupt. There'd have to be a revolution before you wouldn't get your money back. So that happened. So this fraudulent Ponzi scheme, fracking boom, brought to you by Barack Obama. Screwed up the conventional oil market. It drove down their profit margins. They should have been making a lot more money because the price of oil should have actually been significantly higher over the past 12 years.
Mm.
So this pisses off Russia, Saudi Arabia, and all that. I just thought of. I wonder if China lower oil prices inflates economic growth. I wonder if China recycled their money back through to Russia in the economic fundamentals to help offset Russia's losses because of our fracking boom. In a way, after 2014. Yeah, so
meanwhile, I'm over here trying to be like, Bafraco boom? No.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
So we produced a lot of oil, but it didn't increase our reserves at all. Basically, we moved upstream. It is no coincidence that a lot of the fracking happens close to conventional oil fields because geology squeezed that same rock that we are now fracking, squeezed it, cooked it, and pushed it downhill thermodynamically into pockets and made a real oil field, whereas now we're going to the rock itself and blasting it apart and spending a tremendous amount of money and probably spending more energy than the oil is even worth to get that oil out of the rock. And then after that, there's just literally nowhere else to go. You've fracked your source rock, It's like building hydroelectric dams upstream until you've reached the source of your river. What are you going to do then? Put a dam on the rain?
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go after this. This is the end of the age of fossil fuels. So, with coronavirus and all this crap.
Remind me to call my stockbroker. Sell. Just kidding.
Well, it's too late now. You'll want to wait for them to reinflate the asset price so they can sell, but you don't have anything worth selling, so sorry.
I got a Subaru. You want to buy
No, I don't. That's one thing I'll say, never buy a new car, because in about 12 years, there will be no cars running steadily on the roads. It'll be convoys, armored convoys. They're making cars that'll never be driven. We're making planes right now that will never be flown. And I'm dead fucking serious about this. I've probably maybe even worked on carbon fiber that will find its way into a plane
that will
never carry a person. They'll make it, and then they'll look at it. And then they'll say, how much do we have to pay to store this? Oh, let's turn it into a homeless shelter. I don't know.
Sure good this thing is light and strong with all
Yeah.
that carbon fiber we made.
Swear to God, like we should be making carbon fiber like box homes. I'm not joking. So, so coronavirus hits, our social structure and our healthcare system is a joke, especially in the United States.
It sounds pretty topical. Usually we avoid that.
We're going for it though. And Saudi Arabia did not have to go to the United States to try to deal with oil price problems, production being way too high for the newly decreased demand. Demand just goes poof, it's gone. Like now, today, whatever the day is, the 25th of June, there's a few planes flying overhead, but about a month ago, I recall going all day without seeing one. It's gone.
My neighbor was telling me everywhere they store them is full up. Like
Yes.
they can't even retire anymore because there's nowhere to not retire, but
Yeah.
temporarily
Temporarily.
ground,
Right?
because all the places you usually do that are already. Oh, and this is sort of just a silly detail, but I didn't know this. He says their tails get painted, so you don't like. It's bad press to see like the logos on their tails get literally painted. According to my neighbor.
Painted over?
Yeah, and he said that's the first thing that happens at a crash site too.
Oh, no shit.
Somebody shows up and paints the tail, so you don't have the image of
That
that
makes sense.
brand
Yeah.
in a smoldering heap. But apparently they do the same thing when they go into storage. Yeah,
Makes sense.
according to him, anyway.
I believe it.
Yeah. Just a
Another
little,
thing
little tidbit for you there.
Hey, another tidbit. You may have recalled this. These things are like, these sort of shocks to the system that happen, and then people just reassert the ancient narrative that no longer applies. Do you remember when oil was trading at negative values about a month and a half ago on the Wall Street Journal? Made the front page.
That, yeah.
There was nowhere to store it. People were paying
to get rid of it.
to get rid of it.
Our most valuable.
There were memes about it where people were comparing it to the dollar menu on McDonald's for a barrel of oil. It was less than $1 for a fucking barrel of oil. The energy content of a barrel of oil, it's about 55 gallons. Okay? The energy content, people have done the math on like human labor, like horsepower,
Sure.
human power.
Yeah.
It's one barrel of oil has the energy content of 4 years of human labor.
Of 4 years.
Of a man, a grown
one-
man doing
okay.
labor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
That was worth less than $1 this year.
You're hardly building a pyramid with one barrel, but yeah. Anyway,
Right.
it's nice to have.
But I bet those
comparisons.
workers would have loved to be able to use oil to build a pyramid.
Fair enough.
Right? Yeah. You could sit there and think of the stereotype of the long line of guys with the ropes pulling the big block
Yes.
over the log rollers, and
Yeah.
there's the supervisor on top of the block carrying the whip.
Yeah.
Or you could have that, or you could have a barrel of oil. Our whole lifestyle is oil-based. Another piece of math that has been done, this has actually been done by reputable economists. The average American...
Sounds like an oxymoron.
The average American has, in terms of our mechanization between our stoves that cook for us and our microwave and our washing machines, has the equivalent of 55 servants pre-industrially.
Oh wow.
You know, so you
Right.
think of the English aristocrat, being like, "Oh, fetch me my,
Yeah.
clean my teeth and wipe my ass
Yeah,
and do all this other
Start the stove.
put the
whatever.
kettle on, all this,
Right.
We have 55 of those. If you saw an English aristocrat with 20 servants, you'd be like, wow, that's extravagant.
Yeah.
Whew. So, Saudi Arabia had to go not to the United States, but to Russia and try to negotiate a reduction in production, a voluntarily, like turn off your taps. Russia has tremendous amounts of oil that it can produce quite cheaply. And it could stop producing that cheap oil if it wanted to. They can make money if it's like $20 a barrel in some of their fields. Not quite as
Wow.
cheap as Saudi Arabia's. Yeah, they can still make money though.
Okay.
But Russia is a much stronger and more profoundly more diversified economy. You know, like Russia exports forestry products. Can't think of how many forestry products Saudi Arabia exports. Or wheat. Russia is the world's largest grain exporter. Russia declined to make a deal with Saudi Arabia. And it started a price war, which is part of the reason the price tanked so spectacularly.
I see.
Thanks to the crushing of demand, thanks to coronavirus.
Why did Russia not want to make that deal? Wouldn't it have been in both of their best interests to say, oh, well, let's keep it above 30 at least?
What geopolitical rival would they maybe want to really fucking twist the screws on?
Well, I've been watching a lot of 80s movies, so
Sure.
that's actually not true. But, you know,
Right.
I've got one guess.
American fracking companies have accumulated in the past 12 years of fraudulent financial bullshit fracking $250 billion worth of debt. They're cash flow negative with that amount of debt. It's that amount of debt and growing. They're not paying.
Right.
They're not even paying off the debt when it's $100 a barrel or $75 a
Yeah,
barrel.
what did my neighbor just say? You got
So Russia went like this.
You gotta pay the vig and the nut, you know?
Russia went like this to the American fracking industry.
They can't wait to see the bubble burst.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Saudi Arabia is protected by who?
Fuck your fraudulent oil. We're gonna let it get to $0 a barrel.
Let's see how well you tolerate $20 a barrel versus us.
Yeah.
We'll sit there and wait, and we will watch you bleed white.
Right.
The color will drain from your face, and there'll be this big pool of blood on the floor, and we'll be sitting there watching you, waiting because we're Russian and we don't like bullshit.
And we'll still have. So what's the? I mean, use conventional. I mean, if we're calling fracking.
Oh, that's what they've got. Russia doesn't frack.
Right.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, but yeah. So they've still got oil fields that are still worth what they're worth. Of course,
Yes.
they're finite.
Yes, of
But
course.
they're worth what they're worth, and they can actually make money extracting it.
Right.
So they can wait.
They can wait. And Purdue, they glutted the market. They forced Saudi Arabia to get in a price war with them, knowing that the real prize was the extinction of the American shale business.
Right.
I was talking to a guy who's high up in the city of Tacoma a few weeks ago, and I said, what they're going to have to bail out next is the fracking business, the fracking boom. And he was like, what do you mean? Why would they have to bail out the fracking boom? And I was like, because they never made any money. They have $250 billion worth of debt. He doesn't know.
Right.
People don't know this. They don't know. But our illustrious president, may he live forever, has already tweeted about bailing out the fracking business. I think the taxpayers are going to be a little bit mad about that because if we have to bail you out, why are you in business in the first place?
Right, when you were mentioning this earlier in regards to Wall Street and sort of, I have a hard time getting my mind around any of this stuff. So, you know, every time I can sort of put together an analogy or something, but
Or a narrative.
you were right, exactly. You were saying, well, the market's supposed to reflect the reality of things. So when, you know, obviously if things fail, bailouts shouldn't happen. That's the wrong way around. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like forcing data to support your hypothesis or something.
Yep.
You know, you've lost.
The tail wags the dog.
Yeah, right. See,
The markets are supposed to be real. So why?
so they shouldn't need bailed out.
What about the creative destruction of the markets? Some guy is a loyal citizen all his life, obeys the laws, raises a good family, pays his taxes. He's the one who should. He's the welfare queen. You want to talk about welfare queens? I'll name some welfare queens. Goldman Sachs. Bam. Chesapeake Energy. Just go with it. Everybody who achieved every business, AIG, every big conglomerate, horrifying bank, hedge fund that ever has received taxpayer money is a welfare queen.
The Dallas Cowboy. Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, right? Here it is. When they say freedom, it means they're in charge. That's it. That's the only fucking thing it means. When they say democracy, it means they're in charge. That's it. Got nothing to do with, Denmark, the Netherlands, Tanzania, Guatemala. They have more democracy than we do, more democracy and freedom. I can name a few other countries that are in a position where no other group of people or government can tell them what to do. Russia, China. Nobody can tell them what to do. It's up to them. So what's freedom? So if there's no United States, I don't know what Western civilization means, because we kind of monopolized that narrative.
Sort of interesting, too.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Seems weird. It's not France.
We co-opted it.
Yeah,
The
we sure
upstarts
Yeah.
became the torchbearers of it.
And apparently Western civilization means suburbs, barbecues, and ball games.
I do enjoy
I love barbecues.
barbecues
Ball games,
and ball
yeah.
games.
With friends, I enjoy them. But we're looking at this situation where it's like, oh, wait a minute. The United States, thanks to its unwillingness to face the facts and its willingness to kick the can down the road,
Right.
has now created a can so big it can't kick it. So now you're looking, you want to go down the road. Like there's a road over there.
And
I
want to
go down it. But the can is too big. I can't go around the can. But if I kicked it, I think my foot would break. The United States government is bankrupt.
Makes me think of, I can imagine the video game, some weird like indie,
Oh, man, yeah.
just like, I made it in a weekend. Every time you kick it, it gets bigger,
The United States is bankrupt. Let's talk about canceling things. NATO, canceled. Bam! Wall Street, canceled.
We'll have the producer put in
State governments, canceled.
bangerang.
Our unemployment system, canceled. They now have to print money to chase Wall Street losses at the top.
The U.S. dollar.
Canceled. Like, what the fuck? Like, they are printing money to try to re-inflate a Wall Street bubble. A bubble. Like, hey, remember that bubble? That thing you never should have even allowed to happen? You shouldn't be inflating it. You don't want a straw. You want a needle. You want to pop the bubbles as they appear. That's what government regulation is. That's why we have laws. That's why we have things like the SEC and the FDIC. But no, it's completely inverted. So if you're
Initialisms. Sorry. Acronyms.
Like, how many people lost their jobs within the past 3 months? Americans, 47 million? Including myself? I knew we were bankrupt before. So, like, I'm psychologically like, okay, all right, things come and go. And I'm fine with saying NATO canceled. You know what else should be canceled? The Navy, the Army, and the Air Force. I can think of a few other things that should be canceled, or just,
The papacy.
No, they're fine.
Sorry.
They have no teeth left. That's fine. But Goldman Sachs dissolved, unwound. Your assets are now distributed to reputable people. AIG, these others, like, it's really funny, isn't it? Like, if a society goes on long enough and can't address its problems, the revolution can come from either direction, the bottom or the top. And since Americans have no vitality, and it's true, we're all consumers. And so 47 million of us go on unemployment, and we kind of go, oh, well, I'll wait to see what happens.
This is
next.
a real bummer.
Oh, it sucks. You know, like, what are you going to do? Storm Washington, D.C. and enact these reforms? No. So isn't it funny that is a bailout the same thing as nationalization? As long as they're the ones doing it, bailing out the fracking industry is the same as nationalizing your oil industry. But since we treat words like socialism or capitalism not as realities but as consumer products, I don't care what you do, just don't call it socialism. Fuck you. It does. Okay, cool. Go and watch your TV and be told that you'll never be socialist, even if you live in a socialist country. Doesn't matter. It's a consumer product. I'm here to feel good about myself. So they will bail out the fracking industry. They will never call it nationalization. But in the real world, away from America, a national oil industry is so common, it's trivial. We are the exception. Norway, Saudi Arabia, Saudi Aramco, Gazprom. I don't know what the Norwegian one is, but we just can't do it, and history is not kind on a culture that cannot deal with reality in any way, shape, or form. So we will nationalize all these things. In 2008, we nationalized our financial system and then threw it down a fracking hole. We just didn't call it socialism. We didn't call it nationalization. It's just, I don't know, the federal government had an implicit promise to back up whatever Wall Street did. Even if it was the single stupidest investment choice in the history of the fucking world, especially in context of the molten salt reactor. The estimate for the molten salt reactor, which we built 2 years after oil peaked. Discoveries peaked in 1962. We built it in 1964 and started running it in 1965 in Tennessee. The estimate, I think it's just for the United States, it might be for the whole world, is that start to finish, from research and development to production and final deployment, to convert all the world's electricity needs, to replace all the coal and natural gas, and not hydroelectric, but just the coal and natural gas electricity generation, to molten salt reactors, which have an indefinite lifespan. It's literally, as long as the Earth lasts, we'll have enough thorium and uranium to keep them going. So give it 1 million years, whatever, it doesn't matter. Would cost $3 trillion. Okay, that's the cheapest design. Okay, we just printed $7 trillion to back up our financial system, right? There was the CARES Act, which was like $1.5 trillion, and then there was another one after that was like $5.5 trillion. See? If it's their money, if it's the power structure in existence, cost is immaterial. Don't tell me you can't afford universal health care. Don't tell me you can't afford to do anything at all because you just printed literally like $7 trillion and threw it at Wall Street. No surprises there. You could have used half of that amount. We're done. Gandhi was right. Western civilization would be a good idea. Gandhi was right. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as Western civilization. Because if the United States implodes, which it's doing right in front of our eyes, and if the United States declares bankruptcy, what do you do if you're Ireland? Or what do you do if you're Spain? All our vassal NATO. What do you do? Is Canada going to take over a leadership role, or Belize? So I mean, what do you do when the unemployment checks stop coming?
Well, and I imagine there are a lot of I mean, the dollar, the U.S. dollar, right, or the petrodollar, or
Yeah. It's been the petrodollar.
a lot of folks have that, right?
Yeah.
So if that ends up,
Not zero. You know what I think is strange? Strangely enough, it'll kind of happen. I think it'll be. There's kind of two paths forward. One would be, and this would be the funniest thing in the world, is if it became an actual international currency, fully international, where the U.S. wasn't special. Because then we would have this tremendous amount of U.S. debt, and maybe, I don't know, China would basically. They won't. They wouldn't do this, but basically China backs up the U.S. dollar, and it becomes the actual equivalent of like the Bancor, or like the international settlement system. Probably won't happen. The other one is it just becomes one of many and just dwindles away slowly or quickly. I don't know. Like we're looking at social meltdown already here. So, I don't know. How do you unwind all that malinvestment? And how do you unwind a broken society? I don't sell off hard assets and try to pretend it doesn't exist if you're anybody else. I don't know. I know I am a doomsayer, but we are bankrupt. We just don't know it yet.
I mean, you make a pretty good case for it.
As far as I can tell, yeah. The other way to think about it is like, in terms of like, in historical examples, there's more than one occasion where a broken former superpower is very useful as a buffer state between rising powers.
Well, how would that manifest itself?
A really
geographically. I mean,
right. Well, I mean, it might be
or super like
Yeah,
or does it manifest itself in a way that doesn't have to do with actual proximity and geography?
Yeah.
Which might be the case
That's
in
good.
the modern world, right?
Yeah. I mean, like the United States is a really good foe to have, especially if it has a Republican administration, because it talks a lot of shit, but the dog has the dog has no bite. He just barks. And so, I mean, I've said this before, China's going to miss us when we're gone because we make them look really good. Because they're polite.
Right, useful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. A good example in even at the time, you could say it was geopolitics. It was the first empire on which the sun didn't set was not the English. It was the Spanish. They had the Philippines and Mexico, and they went all around the world. But under Philip II, they fought a lot of stupid wars and never balanced their budgets, and he had to declare bankruptcy 3 times. So the Spanish Empire had this tremendous amount of wealth flowing through it from the New World, especially the plantations of the Caribbean and Mexico, sugar, rum, cotton.
Isn't there a silver thing going on too?
There was some silver, I think. I've been to that. I've been to Potosi. I have a rock from Potosi in this house.
Huh.
How did 6 million Native Americans died in those mines?
Yeesh.
Oh yeah, as bad as Auschwitz. It's terrible.
I was gonna say
it's the worst place I've ever been.
Holy crap.
Yeah, they had all the silver from Potosi and big mines in Mexico and gold and slaves and all sorts of stuff. But they kept fighting stupid, religiously fanatic counter-Reformation wars in Europe, and all the money didn't matter. They just lost it in their wars, fighting the Dutch revolt, that sort of thing. And then they declared bankruptcy 3 times. There were tax revolts in the provinces. They had a really unusual political structure where the only bureaucrats, the province of Castile paid the highest taxes but they got the kickback of being the only people who got the good government bureaucracy jobs.
Ah, okay.
So it was corrupt. It wasn't based on merit. Philip II, son of Charles V, famous Charles V, declared bankruptcy 3 times. And after Philip II, it was almost like Spain was huge, but it didn't matter. It went to being a second or third rate power. Like nobody really cared what they said. And their armies revolted because they weren't getting paid. They had excellent armies, the Tercio formation, pikemen with musketeers. It was incredible. It was like a moving fortress. They kicked the crap out of everybody, but it didn't matter because their core geographic interests they couldn't deal with. And so the Spanish Empire drags on to like post-Napoleonic times. Like for 200 years, they were just sitting there as this rotting corpse of something that could have been great.
Huh.
They controlled southern Italy, the Sicilies. They fought the Ottomans. They fought the Bourbons of France. But the French, they had this huge empire, but it was so sprawling that it didn't have a core interest. So when they fought people, right, the whole Spanish Empire with all its wealth and money can't defeat the Dutch. Well, the Dutch have a core. They have a core interest. They know what they want. We want freedom. We want you to go. We want to be Protestant. They fought the Spanish to a standstill and they won, What could the Spanish Empire do if you couldn't have anybody clever enough to really balance all the various self-interests and make them smoothly work and be like, oh, no, the 2 Sicilies, southern Italy, you can do your own thing as long as you send your tax money in. Oh, no, Galicia, yeah, we'll hire some of your best and brightest for the patronage of good jobs, good government jobs. But they didn't do it. They were too hard mentally. Philip especially. And so it broke, but it just kind of sat there and rotted in place, kind of this embarrassment. Backward. It became Jesus Christ, Spain is still barely industrial.
And it was a whimper, not a...
Yeah.
Didn't just disappear.
No. There were kings of Spain, and when was the Spanish-American War? Cuba was a Spanish possession until what? 1898 or whatever? Teddy Roosevelt? It's insane. It just sat there and became this pathetic backwater.
I see. And oh, that's such a bad way to go. Not bad, really. But it's like,
Better than with a nuclear.
Right, but yeah,
Holocaust.
and like the farther you reach,
Yeah.
even at the height of your powers, the your grip strength suffers.
Yeah.
From
That's the one.
the wider reaches.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But then,
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
But even just like that long decline, of course,
That's in
the
the Tao
grip
Te
gets
Ching. It says
looser and looser. Yeah.
if you stand on your tiptoes, you're not steady.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. And here I'd love for somebody to really sit down and define to me exactly what Western civilization meant. And then pretty please tell me what freedom means. And then really tell me if there's any such thing as freedom or Western civilization if the United States kind of implodes in place, which is the best case scenario. This election that's coming up is going to be broken. It's going to be a broken election. Let's hope I'm wrong. But, oh, cool. You had another one. Lottie fucking da. You're going to pull yourself out of a hole. Whoever wins it is going to own this and have to spend 4 years, nationalizing literally everything, bailing out literally everything. Would somebody please explain to me what freedom has to do with the Electoral College? or the Senate, like, God, just go away. They won't, because they can't, because they are institutions and they have inertia. Institutions have inertia. So if you can't reform and if you can't even try to be nimble on your feet, they will devour you.
Right. Things want to persist generally.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the and we're riven so deeply in our core between liberal and conservative that even the most casual level of reform gets portrayed in the most extreme of, rhetorical devices that have no answer. Like, oh, if you want Obamacare, which was a Republican idea.
The Heritage Foundation, I think.
Yeah, Mitt Romney, I think, yeah. Or, yeah, maybe. Obamacare is cast as some life or death anti-freedom initiative.
Right.
Even though it's trivial. Or nationalizing our oil and gas industry, which is trivial. That is trivial. That is fucking utterly like, oh, you mean everybody else does it except us? And this is the thing. You have to think of these aristocratic, these really big corporations that are free from direct democratic control, besides their shareholders, supposedly. If you think of what a corporate board of directors with the CEO and the CFO, chief of operations, all this other stuff, if you think of what they are actually like, it's a cartel of aristocrats. They can sit there and just tell other people what to do without democratic oversight. And they got so lost in their own rhetoric because our culture is such a kind of wormhole of absolute freedom versus absolute tyranny sort of thing. And it's been so it's been a dragon eating its own tail for so long because it wasn't able to be challenged from the outside in a serious way, that you have to ask these boards of directors, are you happy with what you got? You captured the government. You've captured the state. You now have no democratic oversight whatsoever. So now you can sit there and go and maybe get a law passed that puts your rivals out of business. Isn't that nice?
Sounds nice.
Sure. Yeah. But I don't want the responsibilities of government. I just want...
Right. I just want to sell my widgets.
Yep.
But I accidentally...
Yep. I accidentally captured the American government. Oops. What's a better business environment, China or the United States? I mean, you gotta actually, that's a real question. Because China has an effective government that is not captured by corporate interests, and the United States is not that. And so look at us with our legal system kind of imploding, and it's like, well, do you want a level playing field where you actually simply outcompete them and there's a steady rule of law, or do you want to live in one where government kickbacks and connections at the highest level give you an extra edge over your competitor because the sword cuts both ways? And eventually you're going to regret your victory.
Go.
Yeah. And the people at fault for this are the American people because they allowed it to happen. They don't actually believe in good government. Not really. Especially the right wing, of course. But we tolerate the right wing instead of being like, no, you need, like Ronald Reagan was not only wrong, he was completely wrong. Like, I am from the government and I am here to help. And that is my motivation. I do serve my people. You can be an honest government official. You're not, I'm not motivated by want of money. So yeah, canceled. It's all canceled. And then
the U.S. government.
Yeah, ask the right wing.
Canceled.
Yeah, hey, you got what you wished.
Cancel culture's gone too far.
Yeah, right.
Canceled the U.S. government.
Yeah. Did you see the Cops Lives Matter sign driving in?
No, I missed it.
Yeah, it's on the cement right there. There's been I'm pretty sure that was written by, not by a leftist. So yeah, in terms of the actual practicalities of geopolitics, this oil glut, they timed it so well. This oil glut is pretty well placed to help rebound the economies of the Chinese sphere of influence, including China itself, because low oil prices help them recover from the shock of coronavirus. Whereas for us, it's a double whammy, because in the Western world, where we depleted our oil resources too quickly and did not invest them wisely, the prices are too high for consumers, but they're too low for producers. Whereas in places that develop their oil resources later, low prices can simply benefit their people and their whole society without harming their oil producers. So their economies will recover first.
They're all right.
And they have much less debt than we do because they were more disciplined in the past.
But we get kicked on both ends.
If oil prices are too low, our fracking industry collapses, and then we have even more unemployment, and then we have to bail out the fracking industry. If it gets too high, it starts hurting other aspects of our lifestyle because it was always too profligate, too inefficient in its use for oil. So that part of the world, the Chinese, Russia sphere of influence, will recover faster than us, especially because the debt overhang is so much less for them and their infrastructure is newer, so it pays itself off quicker. Less maintenance and repairs while it's stimulating the economy in the Chinese countryside, high-speed rail, things like that, new highways. They'll be in a position to buy up whatever we have that's worth buying. Their economy will start roaring. And they've already, China has made the investment into the molten salt reactor, so they'll be able to start rolling that out. It's a jobs program at first, but eventually it pays itself off very quickly, whereas we will wither away and become a kind of hollow shell of a civilization like Spain.
Right.
That's the best case scenario.
Well, as long as they sell us a few of those reactors.
Yeah. No, we'll keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll and the whole disintegration eventually and Cascadia
And then the other
that
stuff, right?
Yeah. Which isn't so bad, like the idea. I mean, it's hilarious that we think we're gonna. They talk about war with China. I'm like, we couldn't conquer Taiwan. Could you imagine sending the Marines into Taipei? It doesn't make any sense. They would refuse. They would mutiny. They'd say, we're not gonna all die so that you can score some points on Fox News. It's awesome. Call them out.
Yeah, right.
If you want to hamstring our civil society, okay. All right. Go and have your freedom. Go and have it. Keep your guns. I don't give a shit. You're not gonna. Look at the rhetoric. Look at the right-wing rhetoric around Chaz or Chop versus the action. They're not going there. They're not taking it back. They'll just mutter things on the internet and add a few slobbering lines onto a comments section.
Well, right. I mean,
because they're consumers.
It reminds me of There's that scene. You ever see Almost Famous?
No.
Oh.
I know.
There's a scene in it where so there's a charismatic lead singer and it's a 4 or 5 piece band.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
His T-shirts get printed up and it's got the lead singer front and center in focus.
Of course.
And then his 3 or 4 bandmates behind him, sort of blurry.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And one of them's getting sort of mad, but then the lead singer grabs his shirt and says, "See, you love this. You love this, don't you? Because it gives you an excuse to say everything you've wanted to say."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more useful as a platform to continue the rhetoric.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be as happy if it didn't exist. This is preferable, really, because then they get to say, "Oh no, Antifa," you know.
Yep. Oh boy.
You
Yeah.
know.
No, exactly. It's a
You
sullen.
love this.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Sullen resentment. You know, they'll sit there and talk shit about Seattle. I've heard somebody who lived in fucking Eatonville. Not very far away, you know. I've heard that they call them shitiots, like idiots with city, you know, citiots.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
Oh, very
That's
cute.
very nice. And I'm like, you are not country.
All right, right.
You live in Eatonville. You're in a suburb of Seattle. I'm sorry, you know, like you are because considering where I grew up, you know.
Right.
And I've met Washingtonians who fly the Confederate flag and shit. Like, what the flying fuck are you talking
Right.
about?
In
But if-
southern Tacoma, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
Parkland.
In Spanaway, Parkland.
Yeah. And it's like, you weren't at Antietam, bro. You were not in Pickett's Charge.
No, I'm.
And all you want is your safe space and your emotional comfort gun to sit there and make the snarky comment. And the moment you get sick, you will dial 911 and you will go to the hospital in Seattle. You know, like if only you could remove the Confederate flag like they needed to remove your tumor. You know, if only we could give you a pill for that. But go ahead, you know, and it's over. I mean, this will be a contested election, but probably lose. You never know. Even if they win, it won't matter. You know, like that was it. Your swan song is this.
Right.
Great. What a beautiful song. Oh, you're pathetic, wretched, sullen, resentful people who kind of brought NATO and the United Nations and the Western-led world order to an end. Cool. Fine with me. NATO helped break up Yugoslavia. NATO was a bad idea to begin with. So cool, good for you. You know, they don't know how much of an accelerationist I am. You know, I could call out their bullshit at almost any level. Like, yeah, actually, you're right. Maybe we should not be industrial. Maybe we should all be country. There's some really cool ways you can be agriculturally based. You'll have to work hard every day. You'll have a big old sunburn from working 10 hours a day out on your land. But, I mean, we are deindustrializing. You can't support an industrial civilization on a declining energy base. I mean, the next one we have to do ties into the molten salt reactors about renewable energy.
Okay.
Now, it won't work. You know, like I'm pro-green, anti-renewable energy. Wind and solar is what I mean by renewable.
Yeah.
Not... but you can't do it. So we are in the process of deindustrialization. We are going back to pasture. It's really quite something. And so they go, oh, you know, why don't we make wrenches and engines or steel or in the United States anymore? It's like, well, do you want to know why, or do you want to complain about it? You know.
One of my my neighbor again, actually, just the other day, sort of was like, well, the one downside of capitalism is
Wow.
being profit motivated instead of quality. You know, I'm paraphrasing, right? But
But that's what he was getting
I
at?
can't remember what it was we were talking about particularly. But,
Oh my
I can't-
God.
It was something specific, like, oh yeah, they don't make this like they used to.
That's
you know?
amazing. Having met him, I know who you're talking about.
And then I was like, oh yeah, and also the sort of, you know, the capitalists, when they find out they can make more money by, you know, skipping the production step and just going to financialization.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden the U.S. doesn't make anything anymore. It's like, oh yeah, that too. So I'm probably not representing this conversation with him very well, but it was...
Right.
it was
Well, I
sort
mean,
of
another
funny.
trivial aspect is every major industrial power, well before industrialization even, guilds and unions
Mm-hmm.
are so necessary that they're trivial.
Right.
In the Middle Ages, they had guilds of
Right,
producers.
Right.
And like under industrializing Germany, when it was industrializing and challenging France, you know, before World War I, they had strong unions. Unions are necessary to the point of triviality. It's like saying, do you have to treat your water before you drink it? If you're gonna have industrial production, especially, but even before then, Jesus Christ, we are the only culture that even thinks about it, of saying, no, we shouldn't have unions.
Right.
What the fuck are you talking about? That's like saying we don't need to treat our water. We'll let the market decide. Well, if one city treats its water and the other one doesn't, and it's the free market, and you know what the fuck, like, okay, you're not making any sense. You know, go and talk about fairies and leprechauns and the Loch Ness monster, because it's in the same realm. Every important industrial economy has strong unions of an actual negotiating party. It's another one of those situations of, if the aristocrats take control of the state, be careful what you wish for. Hey, you broke the unions in the United States. Congratulations. Cool. Are you happy with your victory? Because could have sworn the economy was doing better when we had strong unions. As if workers want to destroy their own jobs. Right? As if management would do a better job. Oh, well, if it's only managers in control, then they would never financialize things and ship it overseas. Holy fucking shit. The last stage of an aristocracy is an aristocrat huddling in his castle or his chalet
Right.
as the mob breaks in.
With the
He can
doors-
maybe take
the
down
doors
one
barred.
or two.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That's the last stage of aristocracy. The French aristocracy prevented all reform. They stopped it in its they prevented it from happening.
What happened to those guys?
I think they lost a few pounds from the top of their bodies.
8 to 10,
Yeah.
11.
The Russian aristocracy, the boyars, the Russian regime. I mean, Nicholas had something to do with it, but they stopped reform. It's like, hey, Germany's industrializing, other powers are industrializing around us. Should we think about this? People tend to be moving into the cities. Should we modernize? And the boyars were like, no. Wonder what happened to them. We're doing the exact same fucking thing in the context of the rise of China and Russia and the entire, quote, third world, which is a racist term, you know. I mean, it's so funny. We honestly think we can keep the post-World War II order in place, you know. Like, no, we need to be the, you know, and it's like, guys, you sold yourselves out. And it's happening not from a bottoms-up revolutionary impulse, because I don't really think that's possible in American society. It's happening from the top down through our own financial system by other countries, you know, just straight up, like Chuck E. Cheese just declared bankruptcy.
Yeah, I saw that just today.
Who will buy out their assets? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Shinhua, you know. It's so cool. Who's your boss? Who's your boss now? Who's your manager? Do you think you're going to sit on the board? Oh. Is that a good end? Yeah.
Sure, with Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese.
As Chuck E. Cheese, so all of Western civilization.
What a good, yeah. Mhm.